Okay, my name is Howard Eben. I am an alcoholic, and boy, this month has gone way, way, way too fast. I can't believe it. We've gone through it already, and we're just going to have to ask you back for a third time, Young. Without question, we're going to have to make time for that. So I give you our friend and friend of the group and friend of everybody's, Young.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Howard. Hi, everyone. My name's Young. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic, and yeah, the last week it has gone really quickly, and it's been such a privilege to be able to do this and to be asked to do this. And as I was sitting here before I get into the reading, I'm sat in my children's home, and they are happily playing in the other room, and I was just thinking how different that was for so many years when I was that tornado, roaring through their lives, disappearing, going into institutions, and partly because of the amends that I've made to their mother and to them, that things are very different. So I'm beyond grateful, and I hope that I never take any one moment of my sobriety for granted. I really do. So I'm going to get into the reading. On page 79 of our beautiful big book, halfway down. Usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we are not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary. But if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We suggested he write his first wife admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. He did, and also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course, she did not, and the whole situation has long since been adjusted. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission and consulted with others, ask God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. And I will stop there. And what I was thinking is just kind of slowly like recapping when I first, and I will go to the reading, when I first come into the 12-step rooms many years ago when I was in and out before jumping into these beautiful 12 steps, which has absolutely transformed my eyes and my soul. I looked up at the wall and I looked at those 12 steps, which I didn't understand, of course. And my eyes went straight to step 8 and 9. And I thought, yes, I'll do that one first. Because I felt so bad inside. I felt so guilty and ashamed that I thought the amends was to say sorry and was to get forgiveness. And I didn't know what it was at all. And I didn't have any understanding how I'd have to slowly go through this transformation as I did from 1 to 7 to give me the light inside, to change my eyes slightly, to be able to reveal to me my life run on my self-will isn't a success, to reveal to me my defects of character are the very things that cause these harms to others because I want what I want. I can't see that. I can't even see that I'm harming anyone else. And and as I started going through these steps before I got to step 8, these new truths were revealed to me. And I could see that I needed more action, like it says after step 6 and 7. Now I need more action. And I could see where I'm playing God. And then up to the point where we are, where I've just read, what's it say? And Bill repeats this twice, more or less, saying, am I willing to go? Remember, it was agreed we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And then he kind of repeats that, doesn't he, on what we read last week, reminding myself if I'm getting doubt, if I'm getting fear, that I've decided to go to any lengths. And then we have those kind of instructions. Some of them I'm just going to focus on. Um, I understand by this stage because I'm being led through by a guide, by a sponsor who's explaining to me that this is more than words. This is about a demonstration. A demonstration. Um, and then I go in a helpful and forgiving spirit. Under no condition am I going to criticize a person or argue. Um, and I'm not going to try and tell them what they should do. I'm not going to discuss their faults. And my manner is going to be calm, frank, and open. And each amends that I did, I stuck to these instructions like glue. I absolutely listened to guidance from my sponsor, other people who'd made amends similar to the ones that I was about to make. And I was always praying a lot, taking it to God, always pausing before I went in, always asking for strength and direction. And I love what Bill says in Bill's story, I believe, where it says something like, I'll probably get this wrong, but when in doubt, I just sit quietly and ask for strength and direction to do the right thing. This all started to come to me just naturally whilst I was doing my amends. Those words would just come into my head because it didn't come naturally to me to sit quietly when in doubt. It didn't come naturally to me to pause when I was agitated or didn't know what to do. But by now, through these steps and doing the practices that I'd started to do already, I start to get into the habit of pausing and going to God. So to the reading. Usually, however, other people involved. Okay, there was always a lot of people involved in my mess. Therefore, we need not be hasty. So I've wrote there, pause. I'm not going to rush in. I'm not going to rush in because for me to rush in would be me playing God. And through my step 5, I now understand those words in the bit in step 3 where it says, I have to stop playing God. Why? Because it doesn't work. I can see that really clearly now. I can see and I can feel what it means when I'm playing God, when I'm rushing in. So I'm not to be hasty. I'm going to consider each amends. And my experience has been the first amends that I did, there was a lot of fear before I did it. But I took that to God. You know, I did the fear prayer, I did a lot of other praying. And I can see looking back that each amends I did, I seemed to, the fire went on inside me a little bit more. I felt a little bit more courageous, perhaps, to have the strength or courage or just be drawn to do the next one. Because when I looked at that list in step 8 that I got out of my step 5 and I prayed and a few other things did come down, when I first looked at it, I thought, there's no way I can do all that. There's no way I can do all that. But what I did have was willingness to do the first one. The first one, I thought, okay, yeah, da da da. And someone reminded me this the other day. They said to me, I remember, Young, when you said, I will never make an amends against my mother. She was on the list, but I would never do that. And of course, I did that because my heart softens as I go through these amends. My gaze shifts. I start to get closer or perhaps align my will with God's a little bit more. I'm not really sure. All I know is I don't have words for what kind of seems to draw me to want to do something that I didn't want to do before. Suddenly I realize that God is doing for me what I cannot do for myself. I cannot bring myself to make amends to certain people on my own. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So I start realizing, and when I start realizing, my faith starts growing inside me. Um, where was I? And foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save myself. I think about my old, I would throw you under the bus all day long to save myself. And I did do that in my past. Um, from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried because of resentment and drinking. He'd not paid his alimony for his first wife. It makes me think of my children's mother here. I didn't pay for my kids for years, and part of my amends to her, and that we've got different opinions, haven't we, on direct amends. It doesn't say that in the book, and actually it says we made direct amends, doesn't it? Wherever possible. Um, and I've sat down and I've made those amends. But in my mind, I will always give her as much as I can financially today. Always, because I didn't for so many years. Um, Not paid alimony. So I kind of relate that to that. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life. So that bit there makes me think about my story and also Jim's story. When Jim comes out, starts on the steps, he starts the work. And what's it say? Secured a position, gets my head above water. I start feeling better, but I failed to enlarge my spiritual life. But luckily, this guy here, he goes out. He continues to walk this path to grow spiritually. And step 8 and 9 for me, particularly step 9, was a huge event. I don't know if that's the right word. Process for me to grow along spiritual lines, for me to grow into step 10, 11, and 12, perhaps. Um, and then after that, he's getting guidance from the guys from Alcoholics Anonymous. We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary. So these are guys who've got experience walking the path. They're saying, do you know what? If it's necessary, we think you should be willing. And so I would take that to prayer. And I did take some things to prayer that guys told me that I should do them. You should do this stuff, young. When my mind, my self-will, the very thing that seems to be against me, told me I don't really need to do that. It wasn't that bad. And they'll forgive me anyway. But then when I really get quiet and get into prayer after taking guidance, something, I don't know what the word is, something pulls me towards doing the thing that is right, the thing that my mind seems to try and pull me away from doing the thing that's right, even to this day, for sure. Um, we thought you ought to be willing if necessary. So again, am I willing to go to any lengths to get closer to God? Absolutely. Um, but if he went in jail, he could provide nothing. We suggested he write to his first wife, admitting his faults, ask him forgiveness. Again, I'm getting guidance all the way along my amends. I've got my team in my phone. I've got my spiritual crew who have walked this path before me, who have made all their amends, who have experience of making the sort of amends that I'll be making. Um, he did and sent a small amount of money, so that was what happened with me in quite a few amends, financial amends that I needed to make. And I had very little money when I came in for the first couple of years, and I was sending very small amounts of money. And I was very surprised. The response I got was actually always positive of these people. Very small amounts of money. They were just very surprised that my action was in play, that I wasn't just coming out of yet another treatment center, telling everyone I was well, but then doing the same thing. Even like £5 a month for some people. And they were okay with that. They could see that something was changing in me by the fact I was acting in a different way. And I must say, I've paid all those people off today. There's some student loan stuff that's like £30,000. I'm still paying that off. Might be for a while, but do you know what? Money is not my God today. There's nothing I need. There's nothing I need today. I'm sat here with a big book. I'm good. And it didn't used to be like that. So where else? A small amount of money. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. So again, this any lengths. And it says, of course he doesn't want this guy to go to jail. Of course my ex-partner didn't want anything. She just wanted me to show up, to show that I was going through change, and the financial amends was huge. And it was definitely one that I didn't want to make. My mind did not want to make that. Um, and what comes to mind is step 3. This is me turning to God, perhaps without me even knowing it. I'm turning away from my thinking, my action. I'm turning. I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer and closer. And I said this probably last week and maybe the week before, that the amends that I did to my mum recently, I drove 14 hours to do it, 7 hours each way. Everything in me was telling me not to do it. But do you know what? When I did it, I felt closer to God. I really did. And when I reflect on a couple of recent amends, my mum and my son's mother, it wasn't I was trying not to do them. I believed I'd done all my amends. And then as I've kind of gone perhaps deeper, I don't know what the right word is, other things have just come to my mind. I've just awoken a little bit more. Um, and perhaps that will keep happening. I don't know. But I tell you what I have done. I've made all the amends that have come into my heart. And I'm willing to make any more if any more come up, because I did cause a lot of harm in all those decades I was out there. Um, so that reminds me of step 3. That reminds me of when it says if he's willing to go to jail. It makes me think of I'm I get out of the outcome business. I'm not in the business of outcomes. I will put action in with the amends, and then whatever is going to happen is totally out of my hands. And amazing things have happened to me during the amends. Amazing things. I've had my son's mother asked me if anything happens to her, if I'll look after her son. I shared that on week 1. That is amazing to happen to someone like me, someone to trust me with their child if needed. That's amazing. I've had guys who have asked me to introduce them to the 12 steps. People who suffer from alcoholism, people who have seen what's happened to me as I'm doing the amends, and I had no idea. And they broke down in front of me and they said, Young, I think I'm like you. Can you help me? Of course I can. I've even had people forgive me. I've had a lot of people forgive me. Amazing things have happened. The most amazing thing, something's just grown inside me. Some spirit has grown inside me by doing these amends. I feel at perfect peace today. Perhaps from doing these amends and some other things that I do in the 12-step program. Um, and this last bit here on page 80, I love these instructions, and I really take these few lines as almost a blueprint in a way in how I do my amends, where it says, before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. So I'm pausing again. I'm praying. I'm not knocking on doors. I'm not approaching you because you might never want to see me again. As my little brother said, never wants to see me again. He said the last time I tried to make amends, my music partner said he never wants to see me again. I wrote letters to them, and it sort of talks about that later on in this chapter. But so I secure their consent. How have I done that? I've sent texts sometimes. Sometimes I've wrote to the person. Sometimes I've got a message to them through a third party to secure their consent. So if they've said, and I believe the language that I use is very important. Would you allow me? I kind of try and use that sort of language. Would you allow me to make amends? If we obtained permission, consulted with others, so they've said, okay, Young, we'll meet you. So now I'm going to consult with others, my sponsor perhaps, other seekers on this path, other members who have done all their amends, people who have more experience than I do. I'll consult with them. I'll ask them their experience. I'll ask them for guidance. And then, of course, I'm going to God, because now by this stage, I'm in the habit of going to God in all areas of my life. I am going to God. I'm asking. I'm seeking, I'm praying, I'm allowing myself to be led by the sunlight of the Spirit. And this drastic step is indicated. We must not shrink. So there's the instruction. I am all in. I am all in right now when I'm making these amends. So this is how I kind of do it, or have done it. So I've secured your consent. I try, if possible, to meet them on neutral ground, maybe a coffee shop, if possible. Um, so that's just this is just what I do. And I sit down with the person, and I might kind of sort of have a little chit chat, but not really too much. I like to get straight into it, and I thank them for seeing me. And I say something like this. I just say, I'm sober now. For me personally, I don't even mention the 12 steps, but that's just me. I just say, I'm sober now. Um, I've been doing a lot of reflecting over this last X amount of time, and I'm really trying to become a better man and a better person. And when I've been doing this reflecting, I've realized that I've caused you some harm. And then after that, I'm really specific about what harm it is that I believe I've caused them. There was that time I stole your credit card and I took money out of your bank, etc. And then I kind of express regret in that moment. I try not to say the word sorry, but sometimes it might just kind of come out. And then I say, is there anything that I've left out here? Is there anything you'd like to say to me? And I think it's at this moment where I'm quite well, I don't think this is the moment where I just sit back and I listen to them. And this is what comes to mind where it says, I'm never trying to tell them what to do. Because sometimes everything inside me wants to say, yeah, but you did that. Do you not remember this? Do you not remember? But this is where I pray a lot, where my mind is trying to jump in, where my mind wants to show you that you done me wrong as well, though. You hurt me. No, I'm not there for that. I'm there to sweep off my side of the street. It's literally like the odd time if I got arrested and I just said, yes, I did it. There was a rare time. Usually I'm trying to talk my way out of it. But this time I'm saying, look, I did it. And then after they finish talking, I say, is there anything I can do to put this right? And I keep it really simple. I will do anything to put this right. What can I do? And then I leave it with them. And most of my amends, I'm a man of not many words when I'm doing the amends. Often. Some have been longer than others, of course. But I believe it's the intent that I'm bringing to it. I'm coming with my heart and with my soul. And like Howard said last week, I think, because a sorry is from the head and amends is from the heart. And people can feel that. If I'm being a man of integrity and honesty and courage and love, I am bringing that into the conversation with you. They can see that I don't want anything off you. I want to put this right. They can see that I really mean it. And this has been my experience because the man I used to be is not the man I am today. And so some of these guys that I've made amends to, they just can't believe it. They're like, what's happened to you? They can feel that I'm being genuine, that I'm not being dishonest. They can really feel it. And so I would say that 90% or maybe more of my amends have been very positive, very positive. There's only been one that hasn't. And I know I'm jumping to the other bit of the book here, but there's quite a lot I will sort of take when I'm sat down listening to what you're saying back to me. There's quite a lot, but I'm not there to be beaten up with a baseball bat. I'm not servile and scraping. I'm God's people now. So if the only one occasion when that's happened, I've just stood up and I've said, maybe it's not the right time, and I've walked out. I haven't argued. I haven't tried to defend my position. I'm not there to do that. I'm just there with my hands to say, I did wrong. I'm not that man today. How can I put this right? How can I put this right? Um, I often used to think the amends was not an important process. I don't know why I didn't think that. I think maybe because I used to hear, a lot more shares on sort of step one and step four and five, but I don't know why I had that in my head. I can see today it's a deeper surrender. It's me getting closer to God. It's me getting put in a position where I want to live in these steps 10, 11, 12. I want to continue to grow along spiritual lines. My head is held high when I start coming out of each amends. I start feeling lighter. My eyes change. My walk changes. I'm not even, as they come out of my mouth, I think, wow, this sounds crazy, Young, but no, it's not. I didn't know what was going to happen when I came into the rooms. I didn't know what was going to happen when I did a step 4 and 5. I didn't know what was going to happen when I looked at 6 and 7. I didn't know. I didn't know. That's the thing. That's a great place to start. I don't know. But I could see what happened to you guys. I could see what had happened to you guys who talked about this process. And so even the words from you help me as I'm being guided through, as I'm making the amends, to give me strength to do the next one, to help dampen the fear that keeps on trying to grow inside me, because it seems to be this constant ebb and flow of fear, God, fear, God. And so when I come out of the amends, I've lit the fire. But like any fire, if I don't feed it, it will go out. So I can see that I need to keep feeding this fire inside me. And my daughter's just come in the room, so I think that's a good time for me to end it right there. Thank you so much, guys. It's been beautiful to be with you always. Thank you.